Hey everyone, Nubkeks here, and in today's video we're checking out the Windwalker Monk on the Shadowlands beta for World of Warcraft. This spec's actually been requested quite a bit, so very excited to bring this one to you. Of course, we've already looked at several classes already, and we'll be looking at every other spec and class in the game over the coming few weeks or so. Tomorrow we'll probably be looking at Brewmaster and then Mistweaver afterwards, doing the whole Monk trifecta. So yeah, without any further ado, let's dive into the game and let's check it out. Alright guys, and here we are in game. Hope you are as ready for action as my character is here. We're going to begin, as we now do, by starting with a quick refresher, a quick recap of what the core Windwalker Monk gameplay and rotation is all about. Especially for people that are looking for, a new class to play and mightn't be that familiar or haven't played in recent times and kind of are a bit rusty with their Windwalker knowledge. So, what's it all about? Well, first of all, the most important thing, which really sets the Windwalker Monk apart, it looks on first glance very much like a rogue. You've got an energy bar and you've got, chi, which look very much like combo points. But what really makes it different is the mastery here. It's called combo strikes. And what it does is, again, at this particular gear level, your abilities do 26.6% more damage when they are not a repeat of the previous ability. And this is what makes the Windwalker really flow very differently. As much as possible, nearly all the time in fact, you want to always cast a different ability every single time you press a button, compared to a relatively standard monk rogue gameplay where you'll backstab someone like 3 or 4 times in a row and then go into a finisher. It's a different sort of gameplay to that. So we're going to go over here and start punching this guy. In fact, by default, you only have one energy spender and chi generator, right? Which is Tiger Palm. Costs 50 energy. You smack him and generates 2 chi. Also has a proc there. It has an 8% chance to make your next blackout kick cost no chi. We have 2 very big spenders then that we're going to be working for. This is Tiger Palm, by the way. Bam, bam. Cool. The first big spender is Fists of Fury. This costs 3 chi and has a 21-second cooldown. You pummel all targets in front of you, doing 2,700 damage over 3.5 seconds to your primary target, and 1,300 damage over 3.5 seconds to 5 other targets. And you can channel this while moving. So this is going to be like your biggest total damage output ability, though it is on a fairly substantial cooldown. Our other big chi spender is Rising Sun Kick, just about a 9-second cooldown. This costs 2 chi. You kick upwards, doing 1,400 physical damage, and also applying the Mortal Strike effect, the Mortal Wounds, reducing the effectiveness of healing on the target by 25%. So, yeah, they're the 2 sort of core spenders. We also have another sort of filler-ish spender, which is Blackout Kick. It only costs 1 chi. You kick, it does 500 physical damage. And then the interesting thing here is that it does reduce the cooldown of Rising Sun Kick and Fist of Fury by 1 second when used. So, I mean, for example, we'll go into it and we'll drop our Fist of Fury. After the Fist of Fury, we'll Tiger Punch again. We'll do a Rising Sun Kick. We're going to Tiger Palm. We'll do a Blackout Kick now, and we'll be sort of filling in with these 2 abilities. So we're Blackout Kick, which is going to lower down Rising Sun Kick, go into another Tiger Palm. We can do 1 Blackout Kick. We're going to Tiger Palm into our Fist of Fury here. And after the Fist of Fury, we're going to Tiger Palm into a Rising Sun Kick. And we're trying to keep that flow going at all times, always doing a different ability in a row. And that's really the crux of how the spec plays. For AoE, obviously, Fist of Fury is going to cleave a lot of damage in AoE. Then we also have an AoE chi spender, which is Spinning Crane Kick. Costs 2 chi, and you channel the ability. You'll do 506 physical damage over 1.3 seconds to up to 6 enemies within 8 yards. And then this does have another interesting thing. You can see this little number here, right, on the Spinning Crane Kick button. And if I come hit this guy and I hit this guy, right, there you go, it's gone up. What is going on here? Spinning Crane Kick's damage is increased by 10% for each unique target you've struck in the last 15 seconds with Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, or Rising Sun Kick. So in AoE, generally speaking, what you're going to be trying to do is you're going to be Tiger Palming different targets, trying to get as many stacks up on this as possible, so your Spinning Crane Kick is doing even more damage. So that's the core rotation. Now, I very quickly want to jump into the talents. I don't normally like to do this, but I want to show you just the baseline class. But there are some really cool procs, and there's a couple of talents that feel almost mandatory, which is, to be fair, a bit of a con of the class. So, for example, Whirling Dragon Punch is one you're nearly always going to take. And Fist of the White Tiger is commonly taken, though Ascension isn't. And these two definitely sort of feed in and make the gameplay, I think, really fun. There's also a new talent called Dance of Chi-Chi, but we'll come back to that later. But what these do, Whirling Dragon Punch is the most interesting one. It's a devastating whirling upward strike doing 1,100 damage to all nearby enemies, so really good for AoE. It's only usable though when both Fist of Fury and Rising Sun Kick are on cooldown, so you have to use these abilities, they have to be on cooldown, which is cool. And then Fist of the White Tiger is nice because it's another chi generator. That's to kind of give you some variety for Tiger Palm. It's going to cost 40 energy and generate 3 chi, do 600 physical damage as well, but has a 30-second cooldown. So, for example, with this, we can come in, we can Fist the White Tiger, then Tiger Palm, go into our Fist of Fury. Okay, we're going to Rising Sun Kick, we're going to do a Whirling Dragon Punch, then spend our energy. We're going to go into Tiger Palm, and our kicks here. Here we go, Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm. Do one more Blackout Kick. And then we're going to save some energy here. We're going to go into our Fist of Fury. And yeah, so it just kind of adds another little bit of variety here. So we're going to Rising Sun. We're going to spend our energy. We're going to go into our Whirling Dragon Kick then. We're going to go into our Fist of the White Tiger for more energy. Or for more combo points. And just sort of rotate like so. So I think definitely these two abilities together, they give as you can see, a very, very smooth flow to the spec where you're doing, you know, it adds a lot of extra things to think about, which I think personally is really enjoyable. An extra sort of flavor to that rotation. And these are very commonly taken. So yeah, just bear that in mind, that does, in a way, they probably should be baseline because they can be such a core part of how it plays. Now, also on top of that, we do have, you know, some utility spells too, for sure. Let's actually cover the core damage cooldowns, because that's obviously probably one of the things you're most interested in. So, Storm, Earth, and Fire. This is your first damage cooldown. It's 1.5 minute recharge. You split into 3 elemental spirits for 15 seconds, each spirit doing 45% of normal damage and healing. So we pop it here. Wha-bam. So of course 45% times 3 is, oh god, it's 135%, right? So you're going to do about 35% bonus damage total. You can redirect them, like I can tell them go over here onto this, or I can tell them to come over here on this. That's off the GCD. So you can redirect your spirits to attack what you want to, and they'll just mimic your abilities. So yeah, it's like just a straight up damage increase, and again, you can have them sort of spread around. One interesting thing is they charge up your Spinning Crane Kick stacks. So it's really nice for AoE. And this is kind of cool because it has 2 charges, so you kind of decide, you know, how you want to split them up, when do you want to use your charges, you know, which is nice. And then the other cooldown that we have, which is new, coming baseline, is Invoke Swen, the White Tiger. So I'll talk more about this in a second because it is new. So just bear in mind, we'll come back to that. But Swen's pretty cool, right? He's pretty cool. A couple of quick utility things then as well. You know, just core bits that you're going to be using all the time for mobility. You've got roll. You can roll around, which is nice. That has a 20-second recharge, 2 charges. You have Flying Serpent Kick as a Windwalker. We can zip around. And yeah, there's some other bits to the kit as well. You know, you've got an AoE stun. We can heal with Vivify. And the core defensive cooldowns, you've got 2. Baseline, you've got Touch of Karma. You absorb all damage taken for 10 seconds up to 50% of your maximum health, and you redirect 70% of that damage to the enemy target as nature damage over 6 seconds. So this is not only a defensive cooldown, but also a damage cooldown. Of course, they won't hit me, so I can't show you the damage aspect of it. And then you also have Fortifying Brew, which is new in Shadowlands. It used to be a PvP talent. This is a 2-minute cooldown, which turns your skin to stone, increasing current and maximum health by 15%, reducing damage taken by 15% for 15 seconds. So, lots of different utility bits. I'm not going to go through every single spell, but you get the sort of rough gist of what you're going to be doing as the monk. Quite mobile with your rolls. Going to have that whole, like, weaving type rotation, using a different ability every single time. 2 charges of Storm, Earth, and Fire, and then the bigger cooldown of Invoke Swen to play around with. A couple of defensive cooldowns, bit of self-healing, some AoE CC, and yeah, that's the sort of spec that you're generally speaking looking at. All right, well, what is new in Shadowlands? What are the new abilities that are coming for the monk, for the Windwalker Monk here? So I already kind of touched on a couple of these, or hinted towards a couple of these when we were looking there very quickly at the sort of the core rotation, the core abilities of the spec. So let me now break them down in more detail. The first very big thing, which you might have noticed due to its absence, Touch of Death has been reworked for Shadowlands. In BFA, this was a 2-minute cooldown that would store up the damage you dealt to the target and then explode after like 10 seconds or something and do that stored up damage to them. Now what it does, very different, is a 3-minute cooldown. You exploit the enemy's weakest point, instantly killing creatures if they have less health than you. Now, against players and against elite creatures, you can only use it when they're under 15% health, and it will do 35% of your maximum health to them. So, I mean, presuming you have equal maximum health, this would, for example, just straight up kill a player, right? Against, obviously, a boss, like a raid boss or something, it's going to do a really big chunk of damage, for sure, but it obviously isn't going to one-shot them. So, yeah, it's kind of nice, right? It's kind of a fun ability for questing. It feels really fun out doing world quests and just doing that standard stuff. Kind of nice in dungeons as well. Snipe out some of those more dangerous enemies. It does have a fairly hefty cooldown, but it does. I think it feels pretty good. To make up for this no longer being like kind of one of your main damage cooldowns as the Windwalker, then you have a new cooldown. This used to be a talent, but now it is baseline, and this is called Invoke Zwen, the White Tiger. Sorry, I can't show you Touch of Death against the target dummy. It doesn't work, but you'll see it in the gameplay footage. Invoke Zwen, the White Tiger, though. It's a 2-minute cooldown. You summon an effigy of Zwen, the White Tiger, for 24 seconds. Zwen attacks your primary target and strikes 3 enemies within 10 yards every 1 second with Tiger Lightning for another 125 nature damage. So, good single target damage, and he's also doing a nice little bit of cleave as well, which is cool. So, yeah, very, very pleasant. Now, a couple of things here. There are data mined, but not actually, as far as I can tell, in the game, some rank 2 abilities. Like a lot of the other classes, I usually start by going through their level up abilities that they're going to get while leveling through Shadowlands, typically at level 52, 54, 56, 58. That's not in there for Windwalker Monk, but there are a few again, sort of data mine. They're in the data abilities that may end up being these leveling abilities. So I'll point them out to you now, because if they do come in, they have a very serious impact on how you're going to play. The first one is Touch of Death rank 2. It's relatively simple. All it's going to do is Touch of Death rank 2, again in the data, is going to rip out 3 chi spheres. So chi spheres are little spheres that will sit on the ground, and you can run over them to generate 1 extra chi each. So for a total of 3 extra chi with every Touch of Death. It's not game changing, but it's certainly a nice little bonus. So quite fun. A bigger one is Invoke Zwen rank 2. So remember when I talked about the old BFA version of Touch of Death and how that would store up the damage you were doing as like extra damage and then explode for it at the end? Well, Invoke Zwen rank 2 is going to do the same thing. However, what it does instead is that it will store up the damage that you do, and then every 8 seconds it will unleash that damage as extra damage itself. So instead of just being like 1 build up and burst, you're going to get 3 different bursts of that extra damage coming every 8 seconds from Zwen. So I think that's really interesting, actually. That's really, really interesting. And that obviously makes kind of stacking more cooldowns into Zwen and doing as much damage as you possibly can during the Zwen cooldown. It's going to be very, very important. One slight issue is, of course, that Storm, Earth, and Fire, they last for 15 seconds, whereas Zwen lasts for 24. So you're not really going to be able to get Storm, Earth, and Fire up for all of Zwen. Like, you could, but then you'd also overlap it. It's probably not going to be worth it. You're probably looking to get 1 Storm, Earth, and Fire into the Zwen cooldown. So again, like, considering, like, if there's 1 burst of damage every 8 seconds, you're going to do 2 in 16 seconds on Storm, Earth, and Fire. That's 15 seconds. So you're probably going to aim for, like, 2 really big bursts of damage with Storm, Earth, and Fire, and then maybe 1 slightly smaller one, either at the start or at the end, depending on your trinkets and procs and stuff. But just bear that in mind. Some interesting interactions there. There is also another passive thing which does not appear to be in the game yet, which is the old combat conditioning is what it's called. Relatively straightforward. Was that when you blackout kick someone from behind, it's going to do 20% more damage. If you blackout kick them from the front, it's going to heal you for 20% of the damage. That used to exist in the game before, and that again is in the data for Shadowlands, but it as far as I can tell, in any testing I do here, it doesn't actually work right now. It's not a thing. So yeah, we'll see whether that actually comes in. I suspect that some of these things might come in, because we still do need leveling perks here, but we shall see. Again, the big one would be the Zwen. If Zwen actually would store up your damage and then unleash it, that would be pretty insane, and that really changed the cooldown. Because one criticism is that the basic Zwen here is not very interactive. You press the button and you kind of just ignore him. He just jumps around and he does his thing, and it doesn't really matter what you do. It doesn't tie in. Him storing up your damage really brings all of the kit together. So yeah. Okay, another couple of abilities, pretty cool ones here. So first up, Fortifying Brew. This used to be a PvP talent. Now it's just baseline. Happy days, right? Happy days. So it's a 2-minute cooldown. Turn your skin to stone. Let me actually summon Zwen, and we can, again, just let him jump around. Have a good time. Look, Zwen, kill that thing. Good work. You're doing great, champ. Yeah. increase your current and maximum health by 15% and reduce the damage you take by 15% for 15 seconds. It loves the number 15. I mean, this is a really nice cooldown. Like I said, I mean, this is just a straight up benefit coming from BFA. This was only even PvP in BFA. Now it's all the time in Shadowlands. You don't need to use the PvP talents on it, and you can use this in all PvE content. So pretty awesome, actually, pretty fantastic. Another ability we have here is Expel Harm. This one, I think, I don't know. I think they need some extra tuning on this one. Like, I think this might be a little bit placeholder. But it costs 15 energy, has a 15-second cooldown. Expel negative chi from your body, healing for 500, and dealing 10% of the amount healed as nature damage to an enemy within 8 yards. So, I mean, like, it's a bit weird because, you know, doing 10% of the amount healed. So you're healing for 500. That's going to do 52 damage, which is... That's 1/3 of a Tiger Palm. Like, my melee attack just hit there for 300. My melee attacks are all missing. That hit for 85. That hit for 170. Like, I'm not... Yeah, like I said, I feel like the numbers here are pretty placeholder, because that's nothing. Really strange. And the heal is quite tiny as well. Like, a Vivify, which is... costs 30 energy. It's a 1.3 second cast. Heals me for 900. This heals for 500. So, it's a bit odd. And it's on a cooldown as well, so I'm not particularly sure what the point of this is. I guess you could weave it in between abilities. I presume that it resets your mastery. Or, like, it counts towards your mastery, so I could, like, Tiger Palm, do this, and Tiger Palm, and it wouldn't... And it looked like it did reset my hit combo, so I don't know what's going on with this one. It's quite strange. I mean, the hope would always be that there is this PvP talent called Reverse Harm, and, I mean, you can just take a quick glance at this, and you can see that it's massively better. Number one, it's reflecting, it's doing 100% of the amount healed as damage. It generates 2 chi, costs 40 energy, which it just works out better. Like, that would be phenomenal. But that is a PvP talent, so who knows? Like, for example, someone was asking why I don't cover PvP talents more. Like, a lot of them are work in progress. Like, for example, Pressure Points right here, you can see very clearly is intended to work with the old Touch of Death. This is not updated at all for the new Touch of Death yet, so still some work to be done. It's beta, so we'll see. Then one final little change that, again, you'll already spotted in terms of the intro I gave to the class, but Fist of Fury now does have a target cap of up to 5 additional targets after your primary target, and Spinning Crane Kick likewise can only hit 6 enemies. So you've had target cap of 6 targets on Spinning Crane and Fist of Fury. Whirling Dragon Punch at the moment does not have a target cap, but I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it did get a target cap. Yeah, so there you go. Just target caps. That's in for most classes, so it's in for Monk as well. Oh, actually, one last change before we jump and look at the talents, actually. Again, something that's not fully implemented. I believe, though, that they are intending for Windwalker and for Brewmaster, etc., for monks to be able to choose between using two-handed weapons or dual-wielding one-handed weapons. This does not work right now. So, for example, if I use a two-handed polearm, I can still Rising Sun Kick and Blackout Kick, but Fist of Fury does require one-handed melee weapons, which is, you know... Yeah, he kind of needs to be able to use Fist of Fury, so right now this doesn't properly work. But presuming that they update this, you should be able to choose between an agility two-hander or 2 agility one-handers. So that's just also something to bear in mind and just keep a track of, because I would expect that that looks likely to come through. So yeah, there you go. In terms of the talent changes here for the Windwalker, there's actually almost none. There's only one talent change, though it is a pretty good one. So to replace Invoke Swen, who is now baseline, there's a new talent called Dance of Chi-Chi, which I believe is based off an Azurite trait. This is actually insanely good right now. Spending Chi has a chance to make your next Spinning Crane Kick free and do 200% additional damage. And this is really, really good. Number one, it's super fun to play with. Here it goes in there. So Spinning Crane Kick. Let me back out. So just to put it in perspective, so right there I did, what was it, like a fist, 2 Tiger Palms, Fist of Fury, Rising Sun Kick, and the Spinning Crane Kick. If you look at our damage breakdown, you can see in there, in that case, Spinning Crane Kick did a ton of damage. Oh, no, Whirling Dragon Punch. It actually did more damage than the Whirling Dragon Punch. Again, that is a free proc. So not only, this is really good in single target right now. Like, it's great. I hope they don't nerf this. It's really fun to play with. It's really fun to play with. And obviously in AoE, it's going to be even better. And of course, if I'm going to hit more targets in AoE where it, you know, just... Here we go. Bam, bam, bam. Great. Awesome stuff. Spinning crane kick there actually did my top damage. It did the top damage. But yeah, obviously, the more targets I'm hitting, the more it stacks up those spinning crane kick stacks, and it will do more damage. And of course, this will scale up to 6 targets, because spinning crane kick can hit up to 6 targets. So this talent's insane. Probably going to be nerfed. Which is a bit of a bummer because it's super fun. Hopefully this does stay like significantly viable because it's just a really nice addition to that Windwalker rotation. So great new talent. Don't nerf it too much, please, Blizzard. We beg you. First major new sort of feature of Shadowlands that I want to look at then for the Windwalker are the Conduits. So your Conduits are kind of like extra little perks that slot into your Soulbind tree. You should see an example here on screen and get an idea for the sort of paths that you could take through the tree and the types of Conduits you could get. There are Endurance Conduits, which boost survivability, Finesse Conduits, which boost utility, and Potency Conduits, which will boost your damage. First up, for the Endurance Conduits, we have 3 right now. First one is Fortifying Ingredients. Fortifying Brew grants you a shield equal to 5% of your health for 15 seconds, and this, it looks like, can scale up to about 20% of your health as a shield. So this is a really positive benefit, absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's just such a nice perk over BFA, isn't it? Where in PvE, you never even had this ability before, and now you have this really substantial defensive. I think that's going to feel really, really good. Grounding Breath, the next one, when casting Vivify on yourself, its heal is increased by 10%, and it has a chance to refund its cost, and this can scale up to 25% bonus. So it gets super useful in PvP, where you can do some off healing. It's somewhat rare where you'll, be healing in group content in PvE, but whenever you do need to, hey, this makes it quite a bit better. And certainly for solo content, this is going to be an absolute game changer, I think. Really pleasant thing to make your world questing and your Torghast runs and all that good stuff more pleasant. Harm Denial then, the final one. Expel Harm's healing is increased by 20%. It looks like this scales up to 35% bonus. So, I mean, like I said, Expel Harm seems weirdly undertuned right now, so this seems quite useless, I think. But yeah, hopefully they'll be doing more tuning and stuff to make Expel Harm more relevant, and in which case this could become a solid conduit. We'll have to see. For the Finesse Conduits, we have 4. Dizzying Tumble is the first one. Targets affected by your leg sweep do 5% less damage for 5 seconds, and this can actually scale up to 20%. So a really nice perk to have. Possibly for some raid fights, definitely for Mythic Plus, and definitely for PvP. A nice little perk, giving you a bit of extra control and, yeah, some welcome utility. Lingering Numbness. When paralysis ends, your target's movement speed is reduced by 60% for 5 seconds, and that goes up to 90%. Again, I think this is really a PvP thing for the most part. Like, maybe there's going to be some use in solo play and Mythic Plus, but mostly this is going to be a PvP thing, and that's a very potent slow, so very nasty to have to play against that one if you run into a Windwalker Monk. Swift Transference then. Transcendence Transfer increases your movement speed by 10%. This can go up to 25%. So I'm not sure exactly how long this lasts. Let's assume it's something like 5 to 10 seconds. I mean, it's still a nice little burst of movement speed after you do your Transcendence Transfer. So that's certainly a nice little perk. I actually didn't mention when I was discussing the class, but the way Transcendence Transfer works is like the Warlock Demonic Circle. You place down your Transcendence. It sort of sits there, and then you can use the transfer ability, I think every 45 seconds to swap with that body. So kind of a nice little mobility perk. Finally, Tumbling Technique. Blackout Kick has a 5% chance to grant you a charge of roll, and that actually scales up to 20%. So this is insanely good. Super, super nice. Yeah, nice little combo as well with the Celerity talent. Celerity gives you up to 3 charges of roll. So you could really possibly exploit that for some, never to overstack your charges of roll and get tons of mobility in the fight. But yeah, just, again, very, very relevant in fight mobility. Could be fantastic. Going to be great for PvP. You're never going to escape from Windwalker Monk. He's going to be on you constantly. Yeah, very cool one there. And all right, it's time for arguably the most important set of conduits, which are the Potency Conduits, the ones that make me do more damage. Calculated Strikes is the first one. Spinning Crane Kicks bonus from striking a unique target with Tiger Bomb, Blackout Kick, or Rising Sun Kick is increased by an additional 10%. So this one seems incredibly good. It can scale up to 25% additional bonus. This is going to be probably a must-have for, in any AoE encounters. So very potent there. Coordinated Offensive. When Storm, Earth, and Fire spirits fixate on the same target, they deal 10% additional damage. And again, this looks like it can go up to 25% additional damage. So, I mean, this is still, of course, useful in PvP. Not in PvP. It's obviously useful in PvP. Still useful in AoE, of course. You know, they can focus the target down with Fist of Fury and be cleaving onto other targets and still benefiting from that bonus damage. So this is going to be, again, another really good one, and obviously very, very welcome in single target damage, of course. But yeah, really good conduit here. Inner Fury up next. Fist of Fury's damage is increased by 20%, and this can scale up to 35%. I think this, again, you know, great, why the heck not? Fist of Fury is supposed to be our hardest hitting ability, and that really builds on that. So, yep, a nice one to grab there. Simple, not really affecting your gameplay, but always good. And then finally, Zwen's Bond. Abilities that activate combo strikes reduce the cooldown of Invoke Zwen the White Tiger by half a second, and Zwen's damage is increased by 10%. Looks like this can scale up to 25%. So this one looks incredibly good as well. I mean, the very interesting thing about this one is your Storm, Earth, and Fire charges, they come back every 1.5 minutes. So, of course, you can, like, delay Storm, Earth, and Fire to invoke Zwen, and that works fine. But with Zwen's Bond giving you cooldown reduction, it could be very easy simply to have invoke Zwen go down possibly to that 1.5 minute cooldown as well. So they just sort of naturally sync up every single time without really having to worry much, which could be really good. Could have good synergy possibly with the Serenity talent as well, which replaces Storm, Earth, and Fire with just a 1 charge, 1.5 minute cooldown ability. That could potentially be interesting. Yeah, this one has the possibility to be very, very strong, especially if Invoke Zwen rank 2 that I talked about. That's their data mined, but not currently in the game yet, as far as I could tell. Yeah, that could be really powerful. So one to keep an eye on for sure. For the legendary powers for the Windwalker Monk, of course, at the start of the expansion, we're only going to be able to equip 1 legendary at a time. Though you're going to be able to like choose which one you want to craft. Let's take a look at them now. First up, we have 3 general monk legendary powers. These are available to every single monk spec. There is a 4th one that's coming soon, but it's not out yet. So do, keep an eye out for that. I'll try to update you guys, of course, on any of the new stuff that comes out as it comes out, as much as I possibly can. But first up here, we have Fatal Touch. Touch of Death's cooldown is reduced by 60 seconds, bringing it down to a 2-minute cooldown. Definitely fun. I'm not sure exactly how useful that's going to be. You never know. Who knows? Maybe it will end up being useful, but certainly a fun one out world questing. Invoker's Delight. You gain 12% haste for lots until cancelled after summoning your Celestial. So this is a weird one. I'm going to presume that it gives you 12% haste while your Celestial is out. In this case, Invoke Zwen lasts for 24 seconds, so 12% haste for those 24 seconds. I mean, yeah, it's just going to really up your burst damage. I mean, it's going to be totally fine. And once again, going back to the potential for this Invoke Zwen rank 2, where the damage that we deal is going to be collected by Zwen, and then he'll deal it again every 8 seconds. That could be insanely good then if you can stack haste into that, so possibly a very strong one. And then Roll Out. Roll has 1 additional charge. This is, in fact, right now it says 1 additional. Who knows? What is 1 additional? Could be anything. Roll is 1 additional slot in your Great Vault every week. Amazing. Fantastic. This legendary. Get all the loot. Now, presumably it's 1 extra charge. So, if they let us equip multiple legendaries, or if they differentiate and let you equip like 1 damage legendary and 1 just utility legendary or something like that at some point, or heck, maybe we can equip as many legendaries as we want in patch 9.3. This will be amazing then. On launch though, this is pretty much solely for world questing and doing transmog runs and alt raids, I think. For the Windwalker specific legendaries, we actually have 4, all 4 in the game in beta right now. First up, there's the Emperor's Capacitor. Chi spenders increase the damage of your next Crackling Jade Lightning by 100% and reduce its cost by 5%, stacking up to 20 times. So this was obviously a fun legendary back in the day, and it's coming back once again. I mean, it's relatively straightforward. You just make a weak aura to track the buff. When you get your 20 stacks, you can do a big, really hard-hitting, a very hard-hitting Crackling Jade Lightning, which lasts, it's a 4-second channel. Very, very nice. So yeah, pretty cool. Could be very strong for some burst damage in PvP. Could be strong for some burst damage in PvE as well. Certainly an interesting one, and kind of nice to use Crackling Jade Lightning as a core part of the rotation. Not too often, of course, only when you build up the stacks, but pretty cool. Pressure Release is the next one. Whenever you deal damage to a target with Fists of Fury, you gain a stack of Chi energy up to a maximum of 20 stacks. Using Expel Harm, will cause the energy to detonate in a chi explosion, doing 40% of attack power damage to all enemies within 8 yards. The damage is increased by 5% for each stack of chi energy. Now, one thing that's worth noting is that, again, in the data here, obviously it's really difficult to get these legendaries to actually test them, so I can't do that for you guys with just the the turnover rate that we have for these videos at the moment. I just don't have the time. But in the data, it is that Blackout Kick, I think, is the thing that's going to actually trigger this, not Expel Harm, which does seem a bit of a downgrade to me. I kind of like the idea that Expel Harm would do it, especially with the current tuning of Expel Harm, where, well, apart from this, you'd never actually use it, I don't think. But honestly, I mean, again, it's very similar to the previous legendary, I think. You know, you're gonna build this up. Cool with your Fist of Fury. You know, hitting lots of targets with Fist of Fury becomes very valuable. It's something you want to pay attention to make sure that you generate as many stacks as possible. And then you can use this as, you know, you can activate it somewhat when you want. Maybe not so much with Blackout Kick. It would just kind of go off naturally in your rotation. But with Expel Harm, you could choose when to fire this off and do a nice, really big, powerful burst of AoE damage, which again, I think is, you know, it's really fun. It's just an extra thing to track as part of your rotation. That's not coming up too often, but when it does come up, it is very powerful. So yeah, I think this is another really cool legendary. Next up, we have Rushing Tiger Palm. Tiger Palm now has a 4-yard range and increases your critical strike chance for 25% until cancelled on the target. Again, I think it's probably about, I don't think it actually is that. I think it's like 4 to 6 seconds. It's quite a short duration. I think it's 6 seconds. So when used, you instantly dash to the target, so a little 4-yard range dash, and yeah, you can't trigger the increased critical strike effect more than once every 30 seconds per target. I think this one could be, again, really neat, again, for world questing. You know, the little charge is always a little bit of fun, but again, when you're fighting multiple mobs, you'll be target swapping a bit more with this and making sure to, like, Tiger Palm a different person every time. Like, I think, again, it does last 6 seconds, and if you can trigger it every 30 seconds per target, if you have 5 targets, you can alternate between each one, and you can actually keep this buff up permanently if there are 5 targets, and you Tiger Palm a different one every 6 seconds. That'd be really nice. So you're kind of doing more priority damage to whichever target it happens to be. Obviously, Fist of Fury, right? Fist of Fury does more damage to the primary target, includes to the others. So you'd want to, you know, utilize that with the Rushing Tiger Palm. I think this looks like a really fun legendary. It also syncs up with the gameplay style you naturally have, where you do want to be hitting different targets with your direct damage abilities to buff up your spinning crane kick. So all in all, I think this legendary is a pretty cool one, and it sounds like a lot of fun. And then finally, Zwen's Battle Gear. When Fists of Fury end, the critical strike chance of Rising Sun Kick is increased by 30% for 5 seconds, and Rising Sun Kick critical strikes will reduce the cooldown of Fists of Fury by 1.5 seconds. So this one, again, is a nice big win. I think this is really cool. You know, it's straightforward, but satisfying when you get those big, chunky Rising Sun Kick crits, and getting reduced cooldown on Fists of Fury is going to be really good as well. And of course, the more cooldown reduction you get on Fist of Fury, the more you can cast Fist of Fury, and therefore the more uptime you can get on Critical Strike for Rising Sun Kick. And oh my god, it just, everything builds on each other. I mean, at least a little bit. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I think that all the legendaries for the Mistwalker, the Windwalker Monk, are looking pretty damn good. I think they all look very fun in their own way. Of course, you know, time will tell when we actually get to test these and run detailed sims. And see what the final tuning is. We'll see which ones are actually good. But I like how they each have sort of a little bit of a different use here, with the Crackling Jade Lightning with the Emperor Capacitor, that being a big single target nuke. The Pressure Release with the Chi Explosion being more of an AoE nuke. Rushing Tiger Palm building into a very unique sort of gameplay style of target swapping with your Tiger Palm to get extra funnel single target damage. Really, really nice, but having use in AoE as well, because you can keep the buff up more often. And then Zwen's Battle Gear for just the generic all-round good in every situation, really, of just, you know, more Rising Sun Kick crits, more Fist of Fury, just a little bit of a faster rotation and a meteor rotation. So yeah, good set of legendaries. The final piece of the Shadowlands puzzle then is, of course, the Covenant abilities. You choose one Covenant. You get to test these while you're leveling up. In each zone, you unlock the ability to try out your Covenant ability. And then when you reach max level, you commit to one Covenant. And it's supposed to be very, very difficult to change Covenants. You're really encouraged to stick with one, so make your choice carefully. The first Covenant are the Kyrians. Their signature ability, available to every class that joins the Covenant, is the Summon Steward. You call your steward to come to you. He will give you a Phial of Serenity, and this is very much like a health stone. It has 3 charges. You can use 1 charge in each combat encounter. It restores 15% of your health, and it removes all curses, diseases, poisons, and bleeds on you. So again, this is in niche circumstances when these things matter. This is very powerful. And this can, like, even right now, I think on beta, you can use this to remove common Mythic Plus things, even, like Necrotic or Grievous, which is really big. And apparently there's lots of bleeds and stuff, and lots of diseases and poisons in the dungeon. I mean, there's lots of undead and vampiric themed things. So, yeah, this is apparently looking to be very strong. The Covenant ability for the monks is called Weapons of Order. For the next 30 seconds, your mastery is increased by 15%. For Windwalkers, it instantly resets the cooldown of Rising Sun Kick, and your Rising Sun Kick will reduce the cost of your chi abilities by 1 for 5 seconds. And this has a 2-minute cooldown, right? This one's interesting. This one's interesting for the Windwalker. So, on paper, this sounds kind of terrible. Like, when you sit down and look at it on paper, there's a few things that don't seem like they quite work. So, for example, instantly resetting Rising Sun Kick. Actually not that good, right? So let's say I Rising Sun Kick and then I press Weapons of Order. Well, I don't really want to press Rising Sun Kick again. Why not? Why not? Why don't I want to press it again? Well, it's because of our mastery. Our mastery doesn't benefit us if we use the same attack 2 times in a row. So I want to press a different button before I press Rising Sun Kick. And then at that point, it becomes kind of weird. So, because you've casted Rising Sun Kick, then you spent 1 GCD to press Weapons of Order, and then you press another GCD to use whatever other ability to keep your mastery rolling. And then you could press Rising Sun Kick. But I mean, so you're already, like, it's only a 10-second cooldown, you know? And you've already wasted like 3 seconds of spells. You've wasted 2 GCDs worth not using the Rising Sun Kick. So the cooldown reduction isn't as good as it sounds, which is a bit weird. In single target then as well, it gets a little bit strange. Because they're only spammable way to dump chi with the chi reduction, right? With chi, all chi abilities costing 1 less. Blackout Kick becomes free. Doesn't cost anything. But again, you don't want to spam the Blackout Kick. Why not? Well, because of our mastery, where you don't want to ever repeat the same ability. And this is even worse in the sense because Weapons of Order is boosting your mastery. So it becomes extra important not to spam it. So you can end up doing some weird stuff where you're going to be using Spinning Crane Kick in single target just to keep your mastery rolling because there's no point in pressing Tiger Palm. You're going to overcap on chi because you can't even spend your chi. It's a bit strange. Yeah, it's a little bit strange. I mean, it kind of works in multi-target where you can, you know, right? Spinning Crane Kick then only costs 1 chi, and Fist of Fury only costs 2 chi. So it's much easier to fuel those abilities. It's a very, very clean flow, and it certainly lets you use even your Rising Sun Kick. Well, you have to, obviously, but it makes you use that in AoE, which is kind of okay. So I don't know. Like in practice, I've played with this myself. It doesn't feel as bad as it sounds on paper. Like, it definitely has some issues on paper. I think that they could certainly redesign this one slightly. You know what I mean? Like, they could definitely redesign it, the perk a little bit, so that it would it would just work a bit better. But I don't know. It plays okay. At the very least, you know, it's a 30-second buff of 15% more damage from your mastery, which is pretty sick. So can't complain about that too much. But yeah, it's a bit strange, and it doesn't quite fully make sense. But we'll see. I hope that they do tweak it a small bit. Like they could make, I don't know, just have Fist of Fury cooldown twice as fast after your Rising Sun Kick or whatever. I don't know. They could do something more simple to make this work, I think. We'll see. We'll see what they do. There is a Conduit as well that will power up your Covenant ability. This is called Strike with Clarity for the monks. Weapon of Order's duration is increased by 5 seconds, and the mastery bonus is increased by 5%. Looks like this scales up to 20% increased mastery bonus. So this is extremely potent. Extremely potent. So definitely it raises an interesting... This could potentially be insanely strong, right? Just from the mastery bonus alone. If that Invoke Zwen rank 2 comes in, and remember, Invoke Zwen is a 2-minute cooldown. Weapons of Order is a 2-minute cooldown. Well, that's pretty good, right? Get that mastery buff for your Zwen. And if Zwen is gathering all your damage and then exploding with that damage, this should give you so much burst damage on that 2-minute cooldown, and it's going to sync up every single time. This could be incredible. Of course, it does mean that the Potency Conduit, which reduces the cooldown of Invokes When, is really terrible with this one. But I guess that works fairly okay. You can just stick the Kyrian Potency Conduit in place of the Invokes When Conduit, which you might use if you're with a different Covenant, for example. So, yeah, that's just something to bear in mind. There could be some interesting combos there. Yeah, there you go. Weapons of Order. Weird on like kind of weird in its execution, but also I think it's could end up being quite damn powerful. We'll see what they do with it if they change it at all. Next up, we have the Venthyrs. The Venthyr signature ability is called Door of Shadows. This has a 1 minute cooldown and a 1.5 second cast time, and this is essentially a point and click teleport. You can click anywhere on the ground. It's a 35-yard range, and you'll, after the cast time, simply teleport over there. So obviously this is pretty cool. It lets you, you could teleport over like a big laser spinning around, like on Mythic N'Zoth, for example. Stuff like that. There's definitely uses for it, possibly some Mythic Plus skips. I will say that as the Windwalker Monk, I mean, you already have Roll, you already have Flying Serpent Kick, you already have Transcendence, and you probably talent into Tiger's Lust, or, I mean, there's an entire row there of movement abilities. You already have lots of movement, so I don't know if this one is as crazy useful for us as it will be for other classes, but I'm sure creative players will definitely find some good uses for it. The Monk Covenant ability then for the Venthyr is called Fallen Order. Open a mirror for the next 24 seconds, summoning reflections of your order's Fallen Ox, Crane, and Tiger Adepts every 6 seconds. Fallen Monks have mastered the Ox style and will attack enemies with Breath of Fire. Fallen Monks that have mastered the Crane style will heal people with Enveloping Mist. And Fallen Monks that have mastered Tiger style will do a Fist of Fury. So apparently this one right now is apparently super overtuned. It does crazy damage. It is a little bit random. I mean, you could end up getting, which monks you get is very random. So you could end up getting a bunch of healing monks and do lots of healing but not much damage. You might, again, if you're looking for that damage style, you might get very lucky and get lots of the damage monks and lots of extra Fists of Fury. One thing about this, it has a 3 minute cooldown as well, by the way. It has a 3 minute cooldown. One thing about it is that there really isn't any gameplay. There really isn't any gameplay here. You press the button, the dudes come out, they do their thing, and they don't really interact with you in any way. So while it looks quite visually cool, you got all these extra monks coming out and, hanging out with you. It feels kind of cool. There's no particular gameplay aspect to it, so you will either love that or hate it. We'll see how it ends up being. Obviously, it's overtuned right now, apparently on the beta. But expect it to be it's a 3 minute cooldown, so it should be relatively strong. The conduit for this is called Imbued Reflections. Fallen Monks do 20% more damage and healing. That can scale up to 50% more damage and healing. So, I mean, it's a non-interactive conduit for a non-interactive ability. Again, you'll either love that or you'll hate that. For the Necrolords then, the signature ability is Fleshcraft. This is a 2 minute cooldown. It's a 4 second channel, and you will form a shield of flesh and bone over 4 seconds that prevents damage equal to 20% of your maximum health. And that shield can persist for the full 2 minutes, by the way. If you channel near corpses, you can claim their essence to grow the shield, and it can go up to 50% of your maximum health. So this is a really big extra shield. And definitely I think there's quite a lot of uses that you can find for this. I definitely think this fits in pretty well with the Windwalker Monk. Like if you go out to soak abilities, and I think it's quite likely that a Windwalker Monk might be asked in a raid. Hopefully they are viable in raids this expansion, but they could be a really good class to do those sort of extra little tasks, which you might hate that, but it's, as a raid leader here, I really appreciate that. You're looking at a spec which is 3 to 4 mobility abilities, and now has a bunch of defensive abilities as well. Like, they're going to be very mobile and very tanky, and that's going to work well with this. Or even just in PvP, this has a lot of use. In Mythic Plus, I mean, you're so mobile as a Windwalker, you can very easily, after you defeat a pack of mobs and you're going into another difficult pull, or you're going into a boss fight, just channel up that Fleshcraft, be ready to go with a big, chunky 50% maximum health shield, and just whatever, Flying Serpent Kick back to your group, and you're good to go. Phenomenal. I think this could be really, really useful. The Covenant ability for the monks, this one is not great, I don't think. It's called Bone Dust Brew. You hurl a brew created from the bones of your enemies, so edgy, at the ground, and it coats all targets struck for 10 seconds. Your abilities have a 15% chance to affect the target a second time, at 25% effectiveness as shadow damage. And for the Windwalker, Spinning Crane Kick will refund 1 chi when striking enemies with your Bone Dust Brew active, and it has a 1 minute cooldown. So Yeah, I don't know. Like, this one is very much just an AoE thing. So that is quite off-putting, I think. It's just not anywhere near as good in single target. Like, spinning crane kick is just, again, it's not something that you're going to be using in single target. I mean, maybe if you have the talent which procs it, it's not even certain that that talent will be tuned to be relevant in single target. So, yeah, I do think that this is really nice for... this is really nice in AoE, though. It's going to be awesome, right? Because every Tiger Palm makes 2 chi. So normally, spinning crane kick costs 2 chi. You're generating 2 chi at a time. So it can be a little bit difficult, like, to build up enough chi to use your Fist of Fury, or to to weave in maybe some Rising Sun kicks. This will definitely help with that. You will be able to generate more chi and use those on other abilities other than just spinning crane kick, which could actually be quite useful. And I'll just let your rotation flow a little bit better. It's going to feel pretty damn good for AoE, I think, for sure. But yeah, what puts me off about this, what really puts me off, is that it just seems like it's going to be good for AoE, but not single target, and I'm not a big fan of that. The potency conduit, though, is called Bone Marrow Hops. Bone Dust Brew shadow damage or healing is increased by 20%, and when Bone Dust Brew deals shadow damage or healing, it reduces its cooldown by half a second. And again, it looks like this damage bonus can scale up to 50% bonus. So, I mean, kind of nice, right? I mean, the cooldown reduction in particular has gameplay effects. You're going to get this up more often in AoE, which is pretty nice. Interesting to see how it will sync up with that. Will it sync up with, like, your Storm, Earth, and Fire more often or not? Because it could be very powerful with that. Could scale really well. So we'll have to see. Could be good for AoE. Could be great for Mythic Plus. We'll see. We'll see. Then the final Covenant that you have access to is the Night Phase. Their signature ability is Soul Shape. You turn into a Vulpin, you teleport 15 yards forward, and increase your movement speed by 50%. And you can reactivate it every 4 seconds. It becomes an ability called Flicker, which lets you redo that 15-yard blink. You can be in Soul Shape. It lasts for 12 seconds, and it has a 1.5 minute cooldown. Yeah, I mean, this one, again, you're already insanely mobile as a Windwalker Monk, so I'm not entirely sure how useful this one will be in that sense. We'll have to see. It has some nice soulbind perks and stuff like that. Certainly looks amazing, and it could have some usage. We'll see. The Covenant ability then is one of the most beautiful ones actually in the game. I would recommend. I obviously don't want to steal other people's YouTube videos, and I just can't get the footage of all of these abilities. We just don't have the time here on the channel, unfortunately. So I do recommend, just check out a video of what this looks like, because it looks gorgeous. It's called Feline Stomp. Strike the ground fiercely to expose a feline for 30 seconds, doing 60% of attack power as nature damage, and for the Windwalker, ripping chi and energy spheres out of enemies. And the fun thing with this is that your abilities have a 10% chance of resetting the cooldown of Feline Stomp while you fight on a feline. So, I mean, it looks gorgeous. It's like this... It's like this little ley line tree kind of on the ground that you create, and it can kind of randomly branch out. It's got sort of random paths, so it's not going to be the same shape every single time. Like, maybe it'll sort of like swerve off to the left. Maybe it'll be like, a broccoli plant. Like, who knows? It could be all sorts of different shapes. While you fight on this, you've got chances to reset it. So, I mean, it's just it's such a cool ability. Looks really awesome. Looks absolutely fantastic. I do like that it gives you both chi and energy, so it kind of lets you... having the two of them does help the rotation flow pretty well for Windwalker, and that's sort of giving you some relevance in single target. I mean, obviously 60% attack power and nature damage every 30 seconds in single target, even with the resets. It's quite a low amount of damage, but at least you do get some of that single target benefit with the spheres that it creates. This is really going to shine, though, in particular in AoE. That's where you're going to get a lot of the value, where you can hit multiple enemies with this, and again, with those resets, just helping up that AoE damage. The potency conduit for this is called Way of the Fae. Feline Stomp deals 10% additional damage per target, up to a maximum of 50% additional damage. And it looks like, again, this sort of scales up. I could do 25% additional damage per target. I presume that would stack up to like 125% additional damage as well. Well, I'm not sure about that, though, but that is what I would presume. That's what the bolded text there leads me to believe. Again, haven't been able to test this yet, but yeah, I don't know. I think, again, this has the problem that it's going to be a lot better in AoE than it will be in single target, so that does put me off a little bit. But man, like, this ability just looks so damn good. I think it'd be so much fun to play with. So yeah, we'll see how it ends up being. But if you're a Mythic Plus Windwalker, this one could be a really cool one to check out. This could be really fantastic, and it looks damn good. So yeah, there you go. They are the Covenant abilities for the Windwalker Monk. And there you have it, guys. That is our look here at the Windwalker Monk. how's it doing then? If we take all these new Shadowlands additions, how does the Windwalker Monk look? Well, I can tell you straight up, and very clearly and very happily, I can tell you that the Windwalker is extremely fun. Oh my goodness, it is an absolute joy of a spec to play. It is fantastic. Absolute blast. I mean, now here's the thing though, it's quite the same as it was in BFA. It hasn't changed all that much, but the core rotation of the spec, it just works. It just flows really well. It feels absolutely fantastic. I think the new talent as well is fantastic, where you get the proc of the spinning crane kick. That just, I mean, it feels amazing right now because it's completely overpowered. But I mean, it just adds even another little bit of flair to that rotation that fits in well with your mastery. It feels like it fits. It just flows. And it's super cool. So I do hope that one stays good. I think it's fantastic. I also love there's some really great baseline changes. Small changes, but that will make it quite a substantial difference. The new Touch of Death is super fun, and I much prefer it being the sort of like fun little bonus ability rather than being the sort of the core part of the toolkit that it was before. I think Invoke Swen is, again, it just looks awesome. It's visually awesome. It's a giant fucking lightning tiger. Fucking badass, right? Fucking badass. Again, the Invoke Swen rank 2, I think would be... I really do hope that comes into the game, whereas Swen will store up your damage and then unleash it every 8 seconds. I think that would be brilliant. I think it'd also be better than the old version of Touch of Death. The old version of Touch of Death could feel a little bit bad because it was like pure single target, and if anything interrupted you or whatever, it felt terrible. Well, with Swen lasting 24 seconds, you get plenty of time to make use of it, which I think is good. It just sort of fits in better as well with the rotation. I think it's going to feel better, especially in PvP. It's probably going to flow a little bit smoother. So I think that's going to be nice. I mean, we'll see. We'll see if that actually comes into the game. I mean, I think without that, Swen is, he's a little bit non-interactive, but I mean, he's still a giant lightning tiger, so not going to complain too much. And then, of course, at the baseline, getting Fortifying Brew is the big one. Getting that is just another defensive ability. I think it's a bit ridiculous when you sit down and you look at Windwalker Monk. Just for the personal strengths that they have, which is where they're strong, they have so many movement abilities. You can have Roll, the Tiger Kick, Flying Serpent Kick, Transcendence as well, and then you can talent into Tiger's Lust too. Like, that's 4 really good movement abilities, which are just can be part of your kit. And then you can also have 3 defensive abilities. So you now have Fortifying Brew, you have Touch of Karma as well, and then you can talent into like Reverse Harm as well. Not Reverse Harm, what's it called? Dampen Harm. Dampen Harm. Like, wow, this is so many defensive, so many personal movement abilities. That's really, really good. Another really good thing. This is so evil, right? But it's true. This is true. One of the big problems with Windwalker Monk has never been about how fun the spec is. The spec has been fun. It's really good. But why does it not get played too much? Certainly in raiding. I think it's been fairly okay in PvP. You can let me know more about that. I really don't know much about PvP. The big problem with Windwalker Monk in raiding is it's called the Demon Hunter problem, which is, why not just play a Havoc Demon Hunter instead? Because I would describe it that the Demon Hunter is just snappier. Like, they're Demon Hunters, well, number one, the problem was that the Demon Hunters just did more damage than the Windwalker Monk in BFA. Pretty much all of BFA. They simply did more damage. And it was snappier damage. Like the Windwalker, you've got your whole rhythm to what you're doing, and like, Fist of Fury has a channel time. Like, it's sort of very steady damage. Whereas Demon Hunters just like zip on over, I-beam, blah, and I'm just, burr, I'm blasting. I main Demon Hunter in patch 8.3, by the way. So I'm not just picking on us for the lols. Well, I am. But, you get the idea. I mean, Demon Hunter mobility as well. Kind of snappier than the Windwalker. And then they had, crazy survivability. So good news for the Windwalker is that the Demon Hunter is getting nerfed, which is great news. So that could potentially open up some stuff. So in particular, their survivability is being nerfed. So Blur is now massively weaker. It only is a 20% Dior, down from 35%. Netherwalk, their immunity is a 3-minute cooldown, down from 2. They have no baseline leech. They have no dodge on Blade Dance. So I think those things, that's going to help. That's definitely going to help Windwalker, because now the Windwalker can go, hey, take me instead of the Demon Hunter, instead of the Havoc. Why? Now I've got more defensive CDs, and they're more impactful in these several fights, perhaps. And that's pretty cool. That could work out well. So I think that's good. I mean, obviously another issue is that, Vengeance Demon Hunter has typically not been too good in raiding, whereas Brewmaster has typically been the best tank for raiding. So the Mystic Touch thing that the monks bring is already covered, whereas Chaos Brand, the Demon Hunters obviously need to bring that. And like, if you already have the Brewmaster Monk, you already have the leg sweep and the Ring of Peace. Do you need another leg sweep and Ring of Peace? Not so much. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. And certainly in Mythic Plus, I mean, Windwalker did see some play in Mythic Plus, like with Protection Warriors, for example, and some Rogues. I think that was like an MDI comp for a while. That was quite common. I think that definitely the biggest concern is the damage profile, though. That's definitely a big concern. I think the utility is okay. I'd like to see the Windwalking passive buffed. That's where you give 10% move speed to people within 10 yards. I think it'd just be kind of a nice little thing, you know, because Demon Hunters have Darkness and Warriors have Rallying Cry, which now has a rank 2, so it's even better. Death Knights now have Anti-Magic Zone. Like, that's a lot of really... And Death Grips, of course. You know, that's a lot of great utility to bring. It would be kind of nice. Just give, you know, Windwalkers need a bit of love, guys. Let's be real. They need some love. I don't think anyone's... Well, maybe the PvP guys would hate it if they're good. But, you know, in PvE, I don't think anyone would really mind if Windwalkers got a bit of a buff. Like, just buff the Windwalking passive. Like, whatever. Just let it affect everyone within 40 yards. I mean, the casters and stuff would really appreciate that. It might be kind of relevant then in some fights. That could be kind of cool. Like, a reason to bring, specifically, a Windwalker. You know, like, raid melee spots are very much fought over. There's lots of melee classes. You need to have good utility to make it in. And you need to have good damage. That's, of course, the other side that I was mentioning. The damage is obviously something of a concern for Windwalkers, typically. That they haven't had the best damage quite often in the last few expansions. So, hopefully, they will do better this time. I mean, their damage profile... Again, maybe Invoke Swen is the change that's needed. Maybe Invoke Swen instead of Touch of Death is going to be the thing that gets the ball rolling, that really pushes them to the next level. We'll see. Maybe. I hope so. I would love to see Windwalkers in raids more. I think that'd be super cool. And yeah, we'll see. Like, that's the big question. That's the big question for me. I think that their legendaries look super fun. I think their base gameplay, super fun. You know, their talent tree's not great, to be honest, but it doesn't look like it's probably going to get too much love. We can obviously hope so. But yeah, I mean, I think their baseline gameplay has been slightly improved from BFA. It's looking good. It's looking good. And their Covenant abilities are, generally speaking, quite fun as well. A couple of them are weaker. I think that the Kyrian one is kind of clunky, but could be powerful. The Venthyr one is boring, but could be powerful. Necrolord more for AoE. And then Night Fae looks awesome. And obviously better for AoE, but maybe okay for single target. I mean, we'll have to see. But yeah, I mean, do I recommend the Windwalker? That's the crux of the question, the crux of the matter. I would love to. It's just a question of tuning. It's just a question of tuning. Will they be viable, like, damage-wise? Will they have enough utility and enough damage to warrant being brought to different content? Or is their damage going to be a little bit too low, and you're going to be prioritizing, like, the Death Knights and the Warriors and the Demon Hunters, you know, the big, you know, Rogues as well, like those classes that have really good damage, that have really good utility for the group? Are you going to be prioritizing them instead of the Windwalker? That's the concern. But certainly from the perspective of fun, is the spec fun? Does it feel good to play? Will you enjoy it? For the Windwalker, 100%. I think the spec is awesome. Super good. I love it. And there you go, guys. That's the Windwalker Monk. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.